All right, we're going to get into the Broncos. We're going to start with the Denver Broncos. Man, you know, I'm a guy who is traditionally a Broncos fan. I'm an Elway Broncos fan, which was a long time ago. It is pretty hard to get excited about these Denver Broncos in that I'm really not interested in anybody on the team unless I'm getting them at an extreme. You know, there's a couple guys I wouldn't mind taking flyers on if I got a real deal on them. But let's start at quarterback. At least at the time I was writing this, which was yesterday, you don't seem to have any real sense about who's going to be the guy in Denver. You have them taking close to even shares of a not that impressive 4,100 yard, 26 touchdown, 14 picks aerial pie. You got Drew Lock, who you've got projected at your QB 35 and Bridgewater at 34. You got Lock at 28 on your big board. I'm surprised you even have him that high. I mean, you're not touching either of these guys, right?
No, I don't see much value to going in on either. I will say, I mean, the Broncos have now put up 35 and 30 points in back-to-back preseason games, so somehow this offense is flying all over the place in the preseason. We haven't seen that happen in the regular season in quite some time, and I'm not expecting it to. I will say, though, Bridgewater gained a little bit of ground this weekend. He's at this point completed about, I think, 73% of his passes and thrown 3 touchdowns, led scoring drives every time he's been in there. So Bridgewater has been pretty impressive. Drew Lock came out swinging last week. Didn't show those fireworks as much this last week. So it seems like it's still, going neck and neck here without any clarity. That's why I have them split half and half. But even if one clearly takes over, a flyer at best in the late rounds of your draft. I do like Shermer as a play caller. As you can see, right a little bit below league average in plays of -11. But as a historical play catcher, Shermer has been a pretty good one there. So I'm not saying I'll completely write them off if one of them just separates and is the clear-cut guy all year. But even then, I don't want them that much now. There's not much to talk about with these quarterbacks.
Right. I am going to avoid them like the plague. And yeah. I even kind of like Teddy just as a guy and everything, but I'm not interested at all in his fantasy production this year. All right, let's move on to running backs. You have a similar situation at running back. You've got Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon, obviously one guy young, one guy nearing the end of his career. So you can take that into consideration, but you have him close to splitting carries again. You got Williams, last I saw, for 201 and 945 yards, 8 touchdowns, another 27 catches for $167, couple touchdowns. Then you got Gordon, 178 carries, 748 yards, 6 touchdowns. I hope that's all still correct and insignificant receiving work. That's good enough for 23 for Williams, projected 40 for Gordon. And then on the big board, you got Javonte at 22 and you got Gordon at 33. That's another backfield I really don't want anything to do with.
For the most part, I agree. Although I do love Javonte as a player.
I do too.
And, typically in that range of running backs, he goes around late 5th, early 6th. Sometimes he'll even fall to the 7th. By then, I hopefully have 2 running backs. And at that point, I don't mind taking a stab at Javonte because if he did ever take over as a full-down horse, I think you're looking at an RB1 because of how much I love this guy. He broke PFF's metric for broken tackles per handoff. He was insane as a player. The thing is that he can't even separate right now in the preseason with Melvin Gordon not playing. They're still rotating in Royce Freeman. It's about 55% Javonte and then 45% Freeman with the starters, and Freeman playing all the third downs. I was hoping, to be honest, that they just give Williams that entire 3-down workload, see what he can do. That's typically what Pat Shurmur does with his backs. You think of Steven Jackson, you think of Dalvin Cook, you think of Saquon Barkley as a rookie, all monster workhorses. So there is that upside in a Pat Shurmur offense. But why is Royce Freeman working in at all in the preseason? Why don't you see what this guy Javonte can give you before Melvin Gordon comes back? If he can't separate for true 3-down work this early with nobody else out there, when's that going to happen? So I am a little bit worried there about this backfield. I do think, though, Javonte is worth that stab if you have 2 good guys in place. You might have a nice bridge like Raheem Mostert a little bit later to get to him because there is that league-winning talent with him. I'm just a little bit nervous he'll never truly separate in this depth chart.
Javonte, for whatever it's worth, went for $10 in my auction draft.
About fair. I'd say about a fair price there. Yeah.
Yeah, that was slightly more than I was willing to pay at the time. Now I kind of wish I had done it. But there's other guys I wanted more than him that I didn't get. So anyway. All right, now the receivers. you have two pretty good receivers at the top of the board, but it's tough to get super excited about either of them. That's a real recurring theme with this Broncos team, at least for me. Tough to get super excited about any of these guys. You got Courtland Sutton and you got Jerry Jeudy. Until recently, you had Sutton as, slightly preferring him over Jeudy. Recently, you've changed your mind on that and have flipped him a little bit. I'm going to tell you the stat lines. I'm not going to say the rankings because the projections had not updated the last time I went in there. So you can just kind of try to explain yourself on these without me giving you the rankings. You got Sutton for 71 catches on 973 yards, 6 touchdowns, 114 targets. Jeudy, you got 74 catches, 1,036, 6 touchdowns on 125 targets. So, I mean, pretty similar target share, pretty similar numbers, honestly.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a real true 1A, 1B. And at their prices, that would suggest to me Sutton's the better fantasy investment. But the reason I've flipped them lately is, one, Sutton's been recovering a little bit slowly from that knee. They're saying he's finally looking like he's back to that true all-pro self. If that's the case, they might flip again. But I think Jeudy might be talented enough, even at 100%, might be with Sutton. I think Jeudy might be good enough to hold him off. He's just, even last year as a rookie, the routes were insane. It was just the drops that would drive you maddeningly crazy. After he'd be wide open, it would hit him not often in the hands because his quarterback sucked, but still, he had some catchable balls he really should have reeled in that he didn't last year. So I ultimately thought at first Sutton would be the clear-cut target hog. But, man, Jeudy through the preseason, of every report is he's unguardable, whether that's in joint practices. We've seen it in preseason games after the catch, at the catch point, all over the field, both deep, intermediate. I think Jeudy is the alpha here. I really do think he's going to take over. And it's easy to bet on a talent who, he had a couple drops, a little bad case of those dropsies, but still coming in, I loved Jeudy. I still think he already as a sophomore runs some of the best routes in the league. And so it drops being one of the least, sticky stats year to year. I think that'll improve for Jeudy. And he's now become a guy like round 6 after those T. Higginses, those Brandon Ayuk's. I think Judy's a amazing wide receiver 3. Become somebody that I hadn't really been targeting much to now somebody that's on when that investing guide comes out later this week, he's on that list as a wide receiver 3. I'm definitely targeting in that round 6 range for sure.
Real quick, before we get into the tight end, we forgot to, hawk the show at the beginning and ask you to give us a thumbs up. Whatever platform you're watching on, Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, or anything else. I don't know. We're like an octopus. Our tentacles are just, going out and everything. So if we're on other platforms I don't know about, I apologize. But anyway, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, subscribe, give us a review, say something nice. We'd appreciate
all that stuff means the world. And before we move on to the tight ends now, I did want to mention KJ Hamler has now scored back-to-back preseason weeks, has that Deshaun Jackson-like deep speed. So I really like that guy in best ball. I do think it's going to be similar to Deshaun Jackson. It's tricky to project week to week when you can slip him in there. But if there was ever an injury to Jeudy or Sutton, I think Hamler could really step up, and he's become a late round sleeper that wasn't on my radar much entering this year, has really shot up the board because of his strong preseason play, looks fully healthy, ready to go. He's connected with both quarterbacks now for scores. I like KJ Hamler a lot as a late round sleeper.
All right, for tight end for Denver, and this is the one guy who seems to be, he's probably a legit fantasy starter. Noah Fant at tight end, 69 catches, 773, 6 touchdowns, getting over 100 targets. So, up there in the range, at least, of Jeudy and Sutton as far as targets. A big guy, strong athlete. You've got him as your tight end 11 on the projection board, and you actually like him a little higher at 9 on the big board.
Yeah, I just betting on the athleticism on the big board is where the ceiling is really high for Fant because of his profile, just a freak athlete. They're saying they're using him on a more diverse route tree this year, that he's picked up the game a lot better. It seems to be ready for that really true breakout is what everything says. My only question is, okay, so where do those targets come from? If I really like Jeudy, if I think Sutton is a true alpha when he's healthy, and the report suggests he is, that leaves him at best third on the target totem pole for an aerial pie, as we said at the top. Isn't that delicious overall? They are going to want to win games with their defense by bleeding clock. So ultimately, I like Fant. I just don't love Fant. I like the player a lot. I wish, if you put him on the Chiefs, if Kelsey was her or something, that he could go crazy. It's just not the best situation, I think, for fantasy purposes. But yeah, definitely in my top 12 towards the bottom of that. Certainly in every week, tight end 1 because of just the ability and the upside there. But yeah, just not a guy that I'm like going out of my way to go.
I mean, as you said, it's not the ideal fantasy situation for him. Is this the ideal fantasy situation for anybody?
No, not really. Honestly,
Right.
I just think if Bridgewater does take over, that would definitely help Jeudy and Courtland Sutton in terms of like, I forget the exact rankings, but in terms of like accurate passes and not, just like getting the wide receiver the ball. And I'm not even just comparing completion percentage. There's like the stats about who could produce more fantasy worthy wide receivers. Bridgewater sustained 3 of them over there in Carolina, whereas Drew Lock struggled to keep any of them competent last year. So I would much rather see Bridgewater under center for fantasy purposes and specifically for Jeudy. So it still remains one of those situations you have to monitor the rest of the preseason.
So I felt like that was kind of like going through one of those documentaries you see on Netflix or HBO that's just really boring. It's about some sort of corporate structure and just something that where you tune out right away.
What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.